Hello, viewers, Canadians, friends, foes. My name is Roberto, and this is Nico Johnson, my co-host. And welcome to our yet-to-be-named podcast. So this is going to be a weekly breakdown of what's going on in the Great White North. Just see what's happening, a lot of news items, a lot of talking smack, a lot of fun times. Make it a little lighthearted since the entire world is burning to a fine crisp. So let's just rock and roll. We're here to have fun, man.
Yeah, and we are yet to come up with a name, as Bobby said. So if you have any suggestions, put them in the comments. If they're good, we'll consider it, I guess.
I think people are gonna say some really mean stuff.
It's a dangerous game, but once again. And I'm not sure whether this is a good or bad thing. It's just been a mental week in Canada. And there's so much to discuss. So we've sort of got a list of things to go through. And we're starting, I think, with my favourite topic of the week, which was Trudeau's 24-second pause when he was asked to talk about race, I think, in America and systematic racism in Canada. But it didn't go down too well, did it, Roberto?
Well, let's give credit where credit's due. It was 21 seconds. 24, that's, 3 seconds is a long time. But the 21-second pause when he was asked about race relations in the United States and Donald Trump. And he gave a lengthy pause. I'm sure everyone's seen it by now. And he didn't even say Donald Trump's name. He couldn't even utter the name because he's a bit of a baby. He's afraid of offending him. Again, ever since he talked all that smack behind his back at NATO and made himself kind of look like a child when he was when he was laughing around with Emmanuel Macron and I think Bojo, they were all just having a laugh at Trump. Didn't look good, and ever since then, I feel like he's really careful about saying the right thing because he doesn't want to upset our neighbor to the south.
Slightly more cynical than you, because here's how I view this whole thing. I used to do what Trudeau did with that pause. And the reason why is because I thought it would make me seem more intelligent. And I did it for about a month when I was in grade 11. And then after a while, I remember a teacher taking me aside and saying, look, Nico, nobody thinks it's particularly clever. We just know you're doing it for dramatic effect. And it's totally true. He had a difficult question. And it's obviously a really, really sensitive subject.
Yeah.
And in order to sort of showboat his virtue to Canadians and Americans everywhere, he paused for 21 seconds to think about it before delivering some sort of monotone talking point. He's such a moron.
Yeah, so it wasn't a great answer. He basically said, we watch in horror what's going on in the United States, and, just a bunch of claptrap, didn't really mean anything, wasn't really a great answer. And yeah, I do kind of agree. It was a 20-second pause, and he did that thing with his jaw where he was like, like as if he was really thinking about it. But I think basically he was trying to make up an answer that was not stepping on any toes. It was so milquetoast and unoffensive. Or it's just, just say what you want to say for once. Every answer the guy gives is like he's giving a speech at the start of a movie to motivate someone. Meanwhile, I just want to hear your opinion, dude. It's just people like that stuff. I guess that's how he wins. The gets votes. I don't know. I mean,
what irritated me about this issue in particular is that before he made that pause, a few days before that, he gave a sort of a lecture to Canadians on the systematic racism which exists, arguably, within Canada. Right. And this is a guy, let us not forget, who wore blackface literally an uncountable number of times. He doesn't know how many times he did it. And he has the audacity, like imagine the balls it must take to have him wore blackface. And everyone knows you've worn blackface, then lecture a whole country of 36 million people. And by the way, probably the most multicultural and diverse country on earth on how Canada's failed in racism.
Yeah.
We know. You're a prime example of how
Yeah, my favorite, I always see, my favorite detail that people seem to totally forget, they go, well, we all made mistakes when we were young. He was 29 years old. He's 29 years old. He was a teacher. He thought it was a good idea multiple times. That one where he's like in when he was a kid or whatever, and he's like in blackface, and he put a thing in his pants to simulate God knows what's going on there. He painted his tongue black. He sticks out his tongue to show he really likes to black up. I mean, it's been beaten to death, but
with the polish. And another great moment of the election was when he was like in a classroom of kids, and these two sort of young black girls came up to him and said, "So why did you wear blackface?" And like he gave, you know, the response that he mustered up in Winnipeg. And then they asked him a follow-up question: "Did you paint like all your legs as well, and like under your clothes?" He's like, "Yeah, I did do that. Yeah."
Yeah, he was really committed to the bit, which, you know, it's funny in a way, but it's also really not funny.
I mean, that's the thing that I find, like, there was that governor, or I think he was running to be governor in one of the southern states in the US, and it was found that he also wore blackface. Yeah. But that he was like, he's 60 now, and he wore blackface in like the 70s or something. Yeah. Trudeau wore blackface in 2001 or 2000 when he was 29 years old. That's 10 years older than me, you know? And it's like, how could he not understand that was a bit dodgy?
Yeah, no, he's just he patronizes. No one really cares for it, and that's why that answer was so annoying. It's because he was trying to dance around offending anyone, and that's just you know. I think it's because I'll go back to this. I think it's because he's afraid. He's afraid of Donald Trump. I think he's afraid of Xi Jinping, who is basically a dictator in China. I think they asked him straight up like 2 days ago if he was afraid of Xi Jinping. And like a yes or no question, you know, are you afraid of Xi Jinping? And he just gave, you know, same kind of answer, just like we respect China kind of stuff. Meanwhile, he might install 5G towers from Huawei. Can't even say no to that. Everyone else in the world knows that's a bad idea. Meanwhile, we have Trudeau, who's still dancing around and saying, like, we want to do what's best for telecommunications and what keeps Canadians safe. Well, I don't know. It doesn't sound like you're doing either of those things.
Well, it's weird because Canada is naturally very close with the Anglosphere and other countries in NATO. Yeah. And we've watched, and I think Conservatives are particularly irritated about this, is we've watched our allies, and it's not just Donald Trump, it's Emmanuel Macron, it's Dominic Raab in the UK, it's the Australian Prime Minister, all come out and pretty robustly condemn the Chinese regime. Yeah. You know? And it shouldn't, and it's not as though this is a particularly great stand. They're properly vicious, you know, the Beijing apparatchiks. And Trudeau, still to this day, only sort of mutters in disapproval whenever they send the troops into Hong Kong or sort of, you know, threaten economic leverage over Canada or detain two of our citizens, our two Michaels.
Yeah, and Canada has two less Michaels. But and also I'm gonna get mad at a second at the media, at the people that are supposed to be doing, you know, the hard-hitting journalism. Yesterday was the 31st anniversary of Tiananmen Square, where China says nothing happened, but everyone knows a lot of people died, and there's proof. There's really iconic photos and moments that the entire world has seen, and they still deny. Where was the press yesterday asking about, like, just throw it out there, easy. Just, it's not even a gotcha. It's just like, do you stand with the people of Tiananmen Square, like Beijing, on this day, 31st anniversary? I mean, I saw Aaron O'Toole, just, you know, and a couple other candidates. They just at least gave a tweet. I don't even know if Trudeau gave a tweet. He's so afraid of offending Xi Jinping, who thinks he's a dweeb, to be honest.
Yeah, totally. Well, the next, we should move briskly on to the next subject, and that's my favourite news of today, which was Patty Hajdu's sort of public health agency sort of quietly removed Chinese data. Like, they didn't tell anyone; they just took it out of the reports on the coronavirus. And this comes after the health minister, Patty Hajdu, who, by the way, used to be a graphic designer. Our last health secretary was a doctor, but she was forced out of caucus. Just sort of a bit of a digression, I apologise, but just, you know. And a few months ago, when reporters came out and said, so American intelligence is saying China forged their data, that's a conspiracy theory. How dare you do that? You're encouraging sort of right-wing reactionary hate speech. And now it just turns out to be total bollocks once again.
Yeah. Didn't everyone kind of go, oh, that's really weird, when China had no new cases for like a month? Wasn't that kind of odd that
says that they have less deaths and cases than Canada, and it's a country of like 1 billion people.
Yeah, no,
36 million.
Yeah, and this is the thing, Patricia, you're not fooling anyone. You know, there's no way everyone in the world knows that China is lying. They lie about stuff all the time. They deny tragedies where who knows how many people died in Tiananmen. Some say a couple hundred. The highest I've seen is 3,000. That would be almost impressive. But it's blatant lies. Everyone's known forever that they're not telling the truth. They're forging data.
Policy is lying.
Pardon?
They have ministries set up for the purpose of lying.
Yes, they're propagandists. They're super concerned about their image. It's something they're really sensitive about, even though everyone knows that they're not up to anything that's particularly good. They're power hungry and they have a lot of leverage. And I say that all the time. It's not a nice guy to play ball with. And Patty, what are you doing? I thought you were supposed to protect Canadians. I thought you were supposed to. The health minister is just listening to lies. And then you have another, I can't remember who it was, another minister. I think she was in the cabinet. Yeah, cabinet minister that said it's not the WHO's role to challenge data from China. Yeah, it is, sort of. I mean, it's pretty directly their duty to make sure the information they're putting out there is honest, truthful, accurate, because people are dying from the virus, and it's if China's withholding data, then, you know, I'm just going to go out and say it. Shame on them.
I have to say, it's a strong word, Bobby. I have to say, there's a lot of incompetent ministers in Trudeau's government, and there's Bill Morneau, for instance, who's just like this trust fund kid who found himself where he is. I don't think Justin Trudeau is particularly competent. There's a few others like Marion Monsef, who's just totally moronic, but Patty Hajdu takes the cake. Like, she's just, because of, again, it all extends back to the 50-50 cabinet, because they needed to replace a really competent health minister with a woman, and there wasn't anyone available. So they just chose this Karen, and she even looks like a Karen. You know, she's got the hair and everything. and surprise, surprise, she's totally useless at her job. Like, she's just messing up steps along the way and turning it into, like, the pandemic into a political progressive project.
Yeah, and by the way, what bucket of chum did they find
Dr. Theresa Tam in? Holy hell. I mean, talk about, I at first I wanted to like her, right? Because she's the doctor. She's like the authoritative source of information. And she's, she talks in this way that's like kind of like, oh, she has an accent. That's cool. She must really know her stuff. I don't know what that, she just seems like she seemed competent. Yeah, she seemed very competent, right? But then what happened maybe last week, earlier this week, Dr. Theresa Tam, in regards to all the riots and protests that are happening, she says, oh yeah, you can go to them, but make sure you take precautions. For example, and this is a key thing you have to make sure, don't yell. Yelling is actually a good way to spread the virus. Use other noise instruments, which I don't know, and signage to get the message out there. Hold on a second there, Doc. For the last 4 months, that's not how this thing works. I feel like I know that's not how this works. Don't you just have to breathe on a guy and then he dies? Meanwhile, she's telling us that we're allowed to get in these big groups of protests. I don't know. Apparently, the racism cured coronavirus. I'm not sure how that really worked out, but I don't know if it's going to be a surprise to anyone if there's a big spike in cases. And of course, the narrative's just going to be, we wouldn't have to be out there if there wasn't systemic racism. Which, yeah, I guess. But don't you think you should maybe just stay at home? Isn't that what you've been saying for the last 3 months, yelling at me for going to the park?
Adhered to the lockdown policy most closely, and were really quite, almost militant with lockdown policies. And it's the same sort of people. It's university educated, metropolitan, young Canadians, right?
Mhm.
So these people who literally a week ago were publicly shaming people who weren't adhering to lockdown policies closely enough are now on the streets protesting the sort of Black Lives Matter movement. And, fair enough, because it is an important issue. But I think, and I don't know, controversial point, but I think it reveals just the meaninglessness of the modern world. Like, you have this whole generation of yuppies who cling to any movement that's slightly bigger than themselves to give them some direction in life. And you see it with the environmental movement. They've got sort of Joan of Arc, Greta Thunberg, who's sort of the savior.
No, they have martyrs. It's basically, it's like a pseudo religion. Congrats on tossing out religion and replacing it with religion. It's the same thing. You have idols and worship and prayers, and they have hymns. They have hymns that they repeat, like, "Oh, better save the planet," or whatever. I can't really whatever. They have mantras that they say to themselves. It's a religion because they have no meaning.
And I think that's why they react so strongly. So if you are to criticize the environmental movement, if you are to criticize lockdown policies, or a few weeks ago, if you were to criticize lockdown policies, if you were to criticize the violence and looting that's going on in Montreal States right now, that you become a white supremacist because it is attacking the things that they hold most dear. It's you're attacking something that's really important to them, and it goes beyond.
Yeah, did you see those videos? There's only a couple, but they're out there. These Karens, let's just say, that were giving people flack for cleaning up Black Lives Matter graffiti. Well, that was the one in London. There's one from the U.S. where it's just BLM, just like crudely on a government building, just as BLM, and they're cleaning it off because it doesn't look good. I mean, it's graffiti. Everyone hates graffiti. This graffiti's okay. And so they're scrubbing it off, and the lady goes up and is like, "Hey, why are you cleaning that?" She's like, "Oh, because it's graffiti. It's it looks disgusting." Well, that's, don't you like, you don't support Black Lives Matter? Oh, no, that's not really the case. I just don't like graffiti. Not allowed anymore. You have to like Black Lives Matter graffiti, and if you clean it up, you're racist.
It's bloody annoying. Moving swiftly on again, Ontario is not in a very good state. It's a bloody shame because I like Doug Ford a lot, and I like people in his government a lot. But not only has his government totally butchered the pandemic and keeping people safe, they've also botched the economic reopening. So this month, job statistics were revealed for May, and Ontario was the only province to not get more jobs, so to not have start the recovery. And It wasn't just so. Quebec, for instance, had 200,000 new jobs added in May. It's not bad, it's not good, but like they're recovering, right?
Yeah.
Ontario, on the other hand, lost 65,000 jobs this month. The only province to lose jobs, and it's 65,000 jobs. It's mental. And it comes entirely from the fact that Ford is just unwilling to open up the province. And it's hurting people.
Yeah, well, this is the weird kind of thing with science, right? And it sounds weird when you say this, but it seems like I watch the press conferences fairly often, and he keeps talking about, oh, we're going to go by the advice of our medical experts. The medical experts, if they had their way, they would just lock it, like everyone would be inside for like a year. The medical experts want as little virus as possible, right? Which makes sense. Fine, it's their job. But at this point, when it's getting to a point where we've been going on for months, you're still losing jobs. Every other province, apparently, I just learned, is gaining jobs. Don't you got to go with a little bit of gut instinct on this one and kind of take a charge, just to have a stand? We all know where the virus is killing people. It's very sadly in old folks' homes. Well, I think that makes it pretty clear on what places people shouldn't be allowed to visit. Old folks' homes, and what people should be allowed to go about their day. Which, I mean, we live in Montreal. Things are pretty normal here, generally in our neighborhood. Like we live. Yeah, despite there's a pandemic, but people are, you walk down the street, people people are aware. There's hand sanitizer everywhere. People are wearing a lot of masks. When you walk down the sidewalk, people will very visibly just go 6 feet away. People are taking little precautions. You can go to the park, get some sun in groups of like 10. It makes sense. And what Doug Ford is doing, he stopped making sense a long time ago because apparently Ontario is in the toilet. I feel like we just got to, at some point, bite the bullet and kind of move on with our lives because we can't just stay cooped up forever.
He ran on the mandate to get Ontario open for business after years of, liberal mismanagement under Kathleen Wynne and too much regulation. And it's like I'm living in this sort of strange horror world where the Conservative Premier is the most anti-business leader in the country, It's remarkable. And I don't understand, and again, we've made this point before, why you can't open up certain sectors of the economy, why you can't follow Alberta or Saskatchewan's or even Quebec's footsteps, They've delayed the state of emergency for another month. There's no end in sight. I don't know when he's going to lift it. And I don't understand why he's doing it, because he's beginning to not only be criticised by the left wing, but now also the right wing in Ontario are jumping in saying, we should probably open up if we're going to save these people's jobs.
Yeah. So if Quebec, and I love Quebec, I live here, I love the people, but they're not particularly the hardest working. Let me say, they enjoy their free time, I'll say. I feel like the pandemic was almost just a vacation most of the time. People were still going out to the park and whatever. If Quebec is outpacing you in job growth, Ontario, where Doug Ford, you hear all the time, the economic powerhouse, the might that we have, that we're all capable of. If Quebec's beating you, I think you might be doing a bad job, and I'm sorry to say it. People might be mad about that, but I don't care. Nobody here is from Quebec.
So another really exciting thing that happened this week was that Green Party leader for life, Elizabeth May, came out and offered refugee status to all minorities in America because Donald Trump has made the United States unsafe. Roberto, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, the always rational and charming Elizabeth May and totally good-looking, lovely leader came in with a real nice policy, which I gotta say, it's a little far-fetched. Don't you think?
You knew the Green Party didn't have practical policies.
Well, that's kind of the thing, right? Because they've been a party for, I don't know how long, 30, 40, probably 40, 45, 45 years at this point. Because they've been around so long and they've never done anything of substance. They won one extra seat in the last election and everyone was like, what the hell? That's crazy. That's such an accomplishment. Because they've been around for so long and they're never going to get elected to anything. They're never going to,
they can say whatever they want. They can be crazy.
A pathetic excuse for a political party. And they've been around, as you said, for ages. And everyone credits Elizabeth May with making this fantastic Green Party. Every election, they say, we're going to have a green wave this time, boys. It's really coming. We're going to win 20 seats in Canada. And over the course of literally 4 decades, they've won 3 seats. 3 seats over 4 decades. Maxime Bernier's PPC, and say what you will about them, but if you compare the growth of the two parties, was so much more successful this year, despite being, a bit of a joke. Don't tell, the Albertans that. They still managed to get a greater share, or a much greater share than they would have done than the Green Party, if that was.
Yeah, no, it's totally comparable. The Green Party is a joke. Everyone thinks they suck. That policy what was it? So it was because Donald Trump has made America unsafe for minorities. Just all minorities? Or is it specifically black people? Is it it's just all minorities? That's going to be a lot of refugees, by the way. I don't think... Yeah, well, that's her game, and that's what she's always done. She's never really said anything that's particularly clever, never really put forward any solutions that have actually I mean, even environmentalists don't really go to the Green Party because they're so poorly run, but just mismanaged.
It gives you cancer, and she has all these like batshit conspiracy theories. JJ McCullough, who followed me the other day. If you're watching this, JJ, how you doing?
Okay, that's cool. Follow me.
He made a huge list of every single weird thing Elizabeth May has ever said, and it's like 4 pages worth of unproven conspiracy theories. And it's not even about the environment. It's like, oh yeah, well, if you inhale diesel, you're gonna, you get into a coma. Or if you get Wi-Fi rays, your kids will be poisoned. Like really mental stuff. And I know I don't know her, but like I've talked to her as a result of the job. I forget her name, but she's a new Green Party MP in New Brunswick.
Fredericton, something like that.
Yeah, in Fredericton. And she's really, really quite clever. And she's the future of the Green Party. But she can't get ahead, despite being really competent and intelligent, because you have this walrus that's leading you. And you can't push her over and get her out the way.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you were there. I remember a few of us during the Greta Thunberg craze of last summer went down to the protests, the rallies, tons of people, it was like 500,000 people. We went around and did interviews. We talked to people, young students. I don't know how many people I actually spoke to that said they would vote Green Party. A lot of people at the time, I believe, around that same time, the Green Party was surging. Apparently, at one point they were in third. I think they overtook Jagmeet in the polls before he came on and was super relatable and cool at the debates and started making TikToks and stuff. But we went around there, and I think the Green Party, even for students who suck and tend to have pretty crazy ideas, even for them, the Green Party doesn't fit their agenda because they don't really fit anyone's agenda. They're a party of nothing. They're gonna. I don't know how they're gonna survive if Elizabeth May keeps running as leader. And just a point. Look, it's a little bit of a low hanging fruit to comment on. It's all in good fun, right? We're nice people. But there is something to be said that the posters when she was running, she was the only one that had a photoshopped poster. It was like an image of her in like a flower garland and like looking like like Mona Lisa, like not like Mona Lisa, like someone like as if there's something to be said about that. I don't know. At that point, shouldn't you just bite the bullet and just kind of be like, you know what? I'm not the most good looking.
I get what you're saying. Look, I know this guy in the States, and he's a journalist at a pretty respectable news outlet in the States, and he's American. He has I don't think he's ever been to Canada. He's not Canadian in any way, shape, or form. But his hobby is looking at Green Party candidates and seeing how mental they are. So this guy lives in like Texas or something, and he sends me information about candidates who are in the Green Party, and in particular, the riding of Ottawa Centre has just had some mental candidates, and they elect a mental candidate every time. So the first guy who ran for them in 2015 in the federal election was this guy called Thomas Milroy, and Mr. Milroy took just extraordinary pleasure in the crash in oil prices, despite the fact that it, sent thousands of people into sort of the dole line, and he said the UCP should be deported. Let's buy Alberta and turn it into a green economy, which obviously pissed off everyone in Alberta for, I think, pretty legitimate reasons. Yeah. And then it turns out the same riding chose this girl, and I forget her name, and but whatever, in 2018, who was just the most radical intersectionalist you could possibly find. And she joined a women's advocacy organization straight out of university, and she started working for it. And she was fired because she wouldn't stop watching TV at work. And then when the boss said to her, it was like, look, I need you to, report your work, just what any other boss would do. Like, imagine if we were doing that, immediately someone would say, I need you to report your time. You need to let me know what you're doing because I've caught you watching TV a bunch of times. When she asked them to do that, they quit the company and created a social media campaign against the women's advocacy organization, saying it was racist. And after that, they employed her, and she just says the most idiotic things. Like, it's not just a classic, all cops are bastards, It's not just saying that Canada is systematically racist. She also goes a step further and just blatantly is racist towards white people in a way that, no one else would be able to get away with. And it was a huge shock that, we wrote this article about her, and I got a lot of angry messages from Green Party members in Ottawa Centre. But it's extraordinary how they just are so happy to let the strangest people run for them.
Yeah, they really write off their name, right? Just they're the Green Party. They're the Green
Party. And if you like green, you like environment, then you should like the Green Party. Regarding the young lady whose life you ruined, I gotta say, I did feel a little bad. I think she's a public figure. She's out there. She's totally she should be criticized. There's a lot to criticize there. But I feel a little bad because you kind of know that she just did that because it would look good on her resume. She didn't think she was going to win. She never really thought it through. She never really thought there would be a guy in Montreal or Texas, apparently, a guy in Texas who has a hobby of looking up Green Party candidates and informing journalists about how weird they are. I don't think she ever saw that coming. And to be fair, you're allowed to be dumb. You can be stupid. But if you're going to run...
the lack of foresight isn't my fault here. I'm not responsible for her decisions,
Well, let's just leave it there.
I don't know. You do have to... you do have to be careful with what you write, I suppose, because some people do get pretty vicious. And but again, I forget how many people read it. I think 50,000 people read that article. And if there's 200 people out of the 50,000 who get angry enough to send them pretty, unsavory messages, then, the damage is done. 200 people is, attacking you online more than you're able to cope with as a human. Imagine if there was 200 people, on the street sort of lambasting you, how do you deal with that? So I do take your point. It probably could have been done slightly better, but she also is in the public image, I would say, and deserves to be criticised if you do run for parliament or provincial parliament in her case.
So I'll take that as a you're not apologizing.
No.
No apology from Nico Johnson. We don't apologize on this show. Well, I think that about does it, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Great. Well, I want to say to anyone that watched and enjoyed it, give us a big old thumbs up. You can leave some name suggestions in the comments if you like. We have a few suggestions already. What the Canuck is one of them. Whoa Canada, that's a good one. The Weak Boys, because we're doing this once a week. But
Balling Boys.
The double entendre. The what?
The Balling Boys.
The Balling Boys, because we're both ballers, of course. And a few other ones that have been really good. I think Nico's haircut is a pretty funny name as well. Nico, you got to do something about that hair. So just leave it in the comments. Let us know what's going on. Thank you for watching. We'll be back next week. If we missed something, I guess we missed it.
Tell us what you want us to talk about. That'd be, useful.
Yeah, I guess if there's something that you want us to talk about and it's good, then maybe we'll talk about it. I don't really know how this is going to work because it's a weekly show. So if your comment's old, then we're not going to talk about it. But just let us know. I don't know. You can, I have a Facebook page. You can message me if you want.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next week.
Have a good time. Thanks again, guys.